Woo, has it been a week in the weather world? Hurricane Debby slammed the southeast, as we all know, as it slowed to a crawl and brought considerable and extensive flooding from Florida and Georgia to the Carolinas. We saw widespread power outages with high winds, storm surge inundating houses near the coast, multiple tornado reports and outer rain bands, and of course what ended up being the biggest threat in the flooding. We had a wide swath of areas receiving over a foot of rain, as much as 18 inches plus in isolated locations. So this definitely brought extensive flooding to houses, streams, and rivers. But the weather is always changing, and we've got some new things on our plate to talk about this week. We have some storm chances ahead, hot weather persisting for some, but some more refreshing air continuing for many that we've been enjoying this past week, and a look at what's rapidly looking likely to become our next tropical system, maybe even hurricane of the season. So I'm Isaiah, and this is a look at the world of weather for the week of August 11, 2024. This week, the jet stream will be running pretty flat. It will be going through the middle of the country in a fairly typical August-like pattern. You know, by this point in August, much of the country is in or already past their hottest parts of the year, so it's almost time to start thinking about fall. It's definitely coming up right around the corner, and we've been seeing little tastes of that here and there recently. It's mainly for those in the north. So generally, those to the north of the jet stream here have relatively cooler air and refreshing low humidity with nice and fairly seasonal, if not a little cooler than average 70s to 80s for highs and 50s to 60s for lows. The morning's feeling a little crisp and refreshing there. It's down south where the heat will blaze on under high pressure in the 90s to 100s from the plains to the deep south, and high humidity continues to make it uncomfortable with heat dangers, so we need to continue to be on guard. And in between this relatively warmer and cooler air mass, right where the jet stream is where we got our rain chances and rounds of storms moving through. Taking a closer look again at the heat risk, it really is only the south that we need to be concerned about, especially for later in the week. Again, anyone north of this line here has pretty nice 70s and 80s all week long, so we're not really worried anymore about temperatures being an impact. But down south, high pressure keeps us toasty, and daily highs for the next week will top out from the 90s to low 100s every day. Particular hotspots will probably set up across Texas early week and the later week along the Gulf Coast, but any states near the Gulf should stay alert for the heat. We've said it a million times, but continue to take our heat precaution. And just because it's been hot for a while doesn't mean it's any less dangerous. Notice on the heat risk map for the week that these same areas here start seeing the orange, red, and even purple colors repeatedly, especially by later in the week. This widespread swath of purple colors for parts of Louisiana and Mississippi is especially concerning. So this is extreme heat risk that should be taken seriously. We've only got about a month left or so of these hot temperatures before the cooler fall air starts to trickle further south, so we just gotta hang on and keep it up for a few more weeks. Okay, rain chances this week will be riding the jet stream, so it's around this ridge of high pressure that storms will be traveling. We can see how our storm systems start up in the Rocky Mountains, then slide eastward through the plains and eventually Midwest, East Coast, and into the southeast. So we kind of have this train track pattern here. Rain will come in waves along this corridor as the storms ride over these same areas. Early week, we're looking at less of severe weather concerns, more isolated activity with some garden variety storms, and maybe the odd strong wind gusts or hail. But by later week, it looks like a slightly stronger system moving through the east that could bring some greater, more organized severe weather and heavy rain. Some of these rounds could make it pretty far south into the deep south as well, so hopefully this will bring some heat relief if we can get it into Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, and it'll definitely be welcome news. But again, it's mainly this corridor here circled that should expect the fairly frequent rounds of storms as they slip over the ridge through the same areas. Areas further north and further south of the jet stream will be staying drier than not. 7-day rainfall shows this well with this swath of blue and purples here, and no big flooding concerns. They'll be pretty spread out, but again, by the end of the week, we could be looking at some more substantial stuff in the east. There is still some uncertainty on exactly where this sets up. Some of our models push the rain a little further north, some of it keep it as we see here, so we'll be watching that. But bottom line is we have some good rain around for the plains eastward. The west will be staying mainly dry, though we will see some storms and rain from the Four Corners to the Rocky Mountains, but further west, unfortunately, not much rain is expected this week. So that's a look at the rain and temperatures, and finally we gotta turn over back to the tropics because it's looking very likely that our next hurricane of the season is brewing. So overall, the season hasn't been too active so far in terms of the number of storms, but the impact of the storms has been very high, and at the end of the day, that's what counts. It's not the records or numbers, it's the impact of people. So far, we've only had 4 storms of the season, but every single storm has made landfall. So we had Alberto in June making landfall in Texas. We had Beryl, which of course broke records. Category 5 storm slammed portions of the Caribbean islands. We had Tropical Storm Chris, which briefly formed and moved into Mexico, bringing some heavy rain. And then finally, we got Debby, which brought the flooding and damage to the southeast this last week. Next up on the name list is Ernesto, and it is looking pretty much certain at this point that this storm is forming right now. Just yesterday on Sunday, the Hurricane Center has designated this area of invest that they've been watching as potential tropical cyclone 5, which basically means that this storm is expected to become the 5th tropical system of the season as it moves westward, northwestward, and eventually back to the north. The reason why the Hurricane Center designated this as a potential tropical cyclone is because it's not fully organized enough yet to be considered a full tropical cyclone, but it is expected to become one very soon, and it is expected to impact some land soon. So they go ahead and issue these potential cyclones so that they can get warnings at a forecast cone. And here is that cone for the storm as it moves through. You can see it'll be moving due west before it eventually curves to the north. So islands in the Lesser and Greater Antilles need to watch out. We already have tropical storm watches in effect. Puerto Rico should watch out for this. And then fortunately for the rest of the Caribbean islands, it will be curving away. After that, that's where the potential US impacts come into the picture. Right now, most of our models are keeping this pretty well away from the East Coast. So we're talking more about Bermuda being a threat than Eastern US in terms of direct hits. But just because it's as far doesn't mean we won't still see some indirect impacts. Beachgoers for sure will need to watch out for dangerous surf. Some rip currents will be enhanced by this, so that'll be a threat. Again, as it moves north over very warm water and heads toward Bermuda, we could be looking at a pretty major storm ahead. Category 2 is the official forecast, but it wouldn't surprise me if this storm ends up becoming a major hurricane, Category 3 or stronger. Bermuda, still too early to say if you'll be hit, but there's definitely that likelihood and that possibility, so we want to stay alert there for the potential of a hurricane, a potentially strong hurricane as well, headed that way. Again, this next storm will be Ernesto, and it'll be affecting us middle to end of the week, especially as it curves northward and parallels the east coast. So we'll be watching this closely as it strengthens throughout the week. And that's about it for the week, so we have nothing too crazy to worry about. The biggest weather concerns of the week will be the heat down south, especially with some of the extreme heat risks days that we have, as well as the next hurricane that we'll be watching closely. But in terms of severe weather, it'll be pretty quiet, at least early on in the week. And again, by the end of the week, we could have an amplification of the jet stream, so that could bring some more severe weather and some more rain around to the east. I hope you found this video helpful. I'm really trying to make these weekly video updates, but it is tough, so we'll see how this keeps on going in the future. I'll try to have another video by the end of the week covering the new hurricane and its potential track once it actually forms. And for sure, we'll have next week's weekly weather update as well. So again, thanks for watching as always. Stay safe out there in the world of weather, and we'll see you later.